The restaurant was loud, but the tension arrived quietly. It was late evening in Hong Kong, the kind of place locals loved. Tight tables, steam rising from bowls, clatter of chopsticks, laughter layered over cigarette smoke. Bruce Lee sat alone near the back straight, movements economical even while eating. No rush, no distraction, just presence. People noticed him without meaning to. Not because he was famous, not yet, not fully, but because some people change the air around them just by existing. Bruce was one of those people. Calm without softness, still without stiffness. Then the door opened again. One man walked in, then another, then more. They didn't sit. They spread. 5 near the entrance. 4 by the windows. A cluster near the counter. 2 coordinated to be coincidence. 2 quiet to be random. Conversations in the room dipped without anyone realizing why. Bruce noticed immediately. He didn't look up. Didn't turn his head. But he felt the spacing. The angles. The way footsteps slowed when they passed his table. The way voices lowered when they spoke near him. 20 men. Not trained like him, but hardened. Street confidence. Numbers confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from believing math always wins. One of them laughed too loudly. Another dragged a chair across the floor. Slow, deliberate. A sound meant to announce control. A sound meant to intimidate. Bruce placed his chopsticks down gently. He took a sip of water. Still seated. The man closest to him leaned in just enough to invade space. "You eat slow," he said. "Not afraid." Bruce finally looked up. Just once. The man hesitated. Something in Bruce's eyes disrupted the script. No anger. No challenge. Just assessment. Bruce stood. The chair moved back without sound. "I don't fight where people eat," Bruce said calmly. "We go outside." The room held its breath. Because suddenly it wasn't 20 men surrounding one person anymore. It felt like 20 men being led somewhere they didn't fully understand. And the night was just beginning. For half a second, no one moved. Then someone laughed. Not because it was funny, but because laughter is what people use when they think fear belongs to someone else. "Outside?" one of them said. "You think you're walking out of here?" Bruce didn't answer. He was already moving. Not fast. Not dramatic. He walked past the table, past the counter, past the waitress frozen mid-step. The door opened. Night air rushed in, cool and sharp. Neon signs flickered outside, painting the narrow street in broken colors. One by one, the men followed. Some stayed close. Some hung back. A few spread out instinctively, trying to flank without realizing they were doing it. Years of street instincts, not discipline. Noise replaced coordination. Bruce stepped onto the pavement and stopped. He turned slowly. The restaurant door closed behind the last man. The sounds of dishes and voices vanished. The street felt smaller now, boxed in by brick walls, trash bins, parked scooters. No clean exits. No space to run. The men circled him. Someone cracked their knuckles. Another pulled a knife halfway from a pocket, just enough to show it. A third bounced on his heels, eager, impatient. 20 of us, a voice said. "One of you." Bruce looked around calmly. He wasn't counting them. He was measuring distance. "Numbers make people careless," Bruce said. "That's why they like them." The man with the knife sneered. "You talk too much." Bruce nodded. "Then we're done talking." The first man rushed him. Too fast. Too eager. Bruce stepped in, not back. His shoulder rotated, his weight shifted, and his elbow found its mark with surgical efficiency. The man collapsed without a sound, breath gone. Legs folding like they'd forgotten their purpose. Silence hit the group like cold water. Bruce didn't stop. He moved, and suddenly, the street wasn't a place of advantage anymore. It was a funnel. The second man came from the left, swinging wide, too wide. Street anger, not strategy. Bruce shifted half a step, just enough to let the punch pass where his head had been. His palm snapped out, not hard, not theatrical, precise. The man's jaw jolted. His balance disappeared before he understood why. He hit the pavement and stayed there, blinking at a sky that suddenly felt far away. 2 down. The circle hesitated. That hesitation cost them. Bruce moved forward, not chasing anyone, just advancing into space as it opened. He used the street the way a carpenter uses a bench, edges, corners, constraints. A trash bin blocked one angle. Parked scooter narrowed another. The men bunched without meaning to, their own bodies stealing their options. A third rushed, low this time. Bruce's knee rose like a thought already completed. Contact. The man folded, air tearing out of him in a dry gasp. Bruce's heel landed where it had lifted from. Stable. Ready. Someone shouted. Someone else cursed. The knife flashed again, closer now. Bruce didn't look at the blade. He watched the wrist. The wrist told the truth. A small turn, a short strike, bone on nerve. The knife clattered, skidding across wet pavement. Bruce's other hand guided the man forward, into a wall that didn't care about bravado. The man slid down, stunned, embarrassed, breathing fast. The group surged all at once. That was the mistake. Bruce didn't retreat. He threaded through them, shoulder brushing cloth, forearm redirecting force, footwork shaving inches until inches became control. Elbows whispered, knees punctuated, hands opened and closed like switches. He never overcommit, never admired his work. 5 were down now. The rest felt it. Not fear yet, something worse. Confusion. Because nothing they tried landed clean. And everything that touched Bruce came back altered, broken, ended. He wasn't fighting 20 men. He was fighting time. And he was always early. The men began to spread out again, breathing hard, eyes darting. The confidence that came with numbers had cracked, leaking into something unstable. They were still many, but no longer together. Bruce felt the shift immediately. Numbers only help when they move as one. Now they moved as individuals, each trying to be the exception. Each hoping someone else would go first. One did. He lunged from behind, arms wide, trying to grab. Bruce dipped his weight, rotated his hips, and let the man's momentum do the work. A short pivot, a sharp pull. The attacker flew past him and collided with another man who hadn't been ready. They went down tangled, curses overlapping. Bruce stepped between them and the rest. He wasn't surrounded anymore. He had a lane. 2 more rushed from the front, trying to overwhelm him together. Bruce closed the distance before their timing could sync. His forearm snapped up, cutting the first man's advance at the collarbone. The second caught a heel to the thigh, precise, disabling. Both staggered back, one dropping to a knee, the other grabbing his leg in disbelief. The street echoed with uneven breathing now. Shoes scraped. Someone retreated a step, then another. Bruce didn't chase. He held center. That was the lesson the street taught. Control the middle and the edges solve themselves. A bottle shattered near his feet. Glass skittered across the pavement. Bruce adjusted barely, his stance narrowing, weight light. He used the noise to mask movement, slipping inside the next attack before it fully formed. A palm to the chest, a shoulder check into the wall, a quiet thud as another body slid down. 10 down. The rest felt it in their bones. This wasn't a brawl. It was a dismantling. And it was happening faster than fear could catch up. Panic doesn't announce itself. Creeps in when plans stop working. The men felt it now, in the hitch of their breath, the way their eyes kept checking the ground, counting who wasn't standing anymore. They had come out together, loud, certain. Now the street was littered with groans, with bodies trying to remember how legs worked. Bruce stood still, not because he was tired, because stillness was louder than movement now. Someone shouted, "Get him!" But no one moved on the word. Commands require belief, and belief had leaked out with every clean strike. 2 tried anyway. Desperation makes people brave in the wrong way. They rushed from opposite sides, thinking angles would save them. Bruce turned his shoulders, slipped between lines, and made one man crash into the other. A short elbow finished the exchange before it could become messy. For more stepped back. That's when fear finally caught up. Not fear of being hurt, fear of being exposed. Of realizing they had mistaken numbers for power, noise for control. The streetlights hummed overhead, indifferent, casting long shadows that made every movement look slower than it felt. Bruce advanced one step. Just one. The line broke. One man ran. Another followed. Two more hesitated, then chose the same answer. Pride is heavy, but pain is convincing. The ones who stayed tried to posture, to look dangerous without committing. Bruce read it instantly. He didn't chase the runners. He addressed the ones in front of him. Enough, he said. Calm. Final. One lunged anyway, anger flaring brighter than sense. Bruce ended it with a short palm to the chest. No theatrics, no cruelty. The man folded, breath gone, eyes wide with the sudden understanding that this wasn't personal. 15 were down or gone. 5 remained. And now the street belonged to Bruce Lee. The 5 who remained formed a loose line, not by design but by instinct. Space had become precious. Distance felt dangerous. Each of them knew the math had flipped, yet none wanted to be the first to admit it. Bruce watched their feet. Feet tell the truth long before faces do. One shifted his weight back, ready to bolt. Another leaned forward too far, anger overruling balance. A third kept glancing at the alley mouth, escape already chosen. Bruce didn't move. That unsettled them more than his strikes had. In the quiet, the city reasserted itself. A distant bus hissed. A window slammed. Someone laughed 2 blocks away. Life went on, indifferent to the small war that had just ended here. Leave, Bruce said. Not a threat. A door. The angry one surged anyway, shouting something lost to adrenaline. Bruce stepped past him, not away. Turned the man's shoulder with a light touch, then placed a knee exactly where the thigh forgot how to hold weight. The shout became a gasp. The body became a problem the street handled. The others flinched. Bruce repositioned so the wall guarded his back. He never let more than one angle exist at a time. That was the discipline, deny options and choices make themselves. One tried a wide swing, desperate. Bruce cut inside it, forearm sealing space, palm landing clean on the sternum. Not hard, decisive. The man slid down the brick, stunned by how little force it took to end him. 3 left. They looked at each other. This time, they listened to what their bodies were saying. Bruce nodded once. They backed away. Slowly. No sudden moves. Pride had finally met sense. Bruce watched until they turned the corner. Only then did he exhale the smallest release. Not relief, completion. The street fell quiet again. Not the silence of fear. The silence of understanding. The street didn't cheer. It never does. It simply absorbed what happened and moved on. Bruce stood there for a moment longer, eyes scanning the ground, not counting bodies but checking movement. Groans meant breath. Breath meant life. That was enough. A man tried to sit up and failed. Another rolled onto his side, coughing, pride leaking out with every wheeze. Bruce adjusted his stance slightly to avoid broken glass, then stepped away from the center without turning his back on anyone. Old habit. Quiet discipline. A window above slid open. Someone whispered. Another slammed shut. Witnesses. They had seen flashes, arms moving, bodies folding, men falling without understanding why. To them, it would sound exaggerated later. 20 men. One street. No weapons used the way they expected. No rage. No chase. Bruce walked back toward the restaurant door. Inside, the place was still frozen in a different way. Bowls untouched. Conversations stalled mid-sentence. The waitress stood near the counter, hands clasped tight, eyes wide as if she'd been holding her breath the entire time. Bruce pushed the door open gently. The bell rang. Everyone jumped. He stepped inside and paused, letting eyes adjust, letting fear drain. Someone laughed nervously. Another person exhaled too loud. A chair scraped. Bruce returned to his table and sat. He picked up his chopsticks. Only then did the room breathe again. No speech. No explanation. No victory lap. Just a man finishing his meal. Outside, Sirens wailed far away, unconcerned with timing. The street would be cleaned by morning. Stories would spread by night. But the truth was already set. It wasn't about how many fell. It was about how little force it took. When force arrived on time, no one followed Bruce back to his table. Not out of fear, out of instinct. People sensed that whatever had happened outside wasn't meant to be discussed loudly, or claimed, or dissected in the way violence usually is. Felt complete, closed, like a door that had shut itself. Bruce ate slowly, not because he was tired, because rushing would have meant the night still had something to prove. The waitress approached, hands trembling just enough to notice. She set down a fresh bowl without asking. Bruce nodded in thanks. That nod steadied her more than words could have. Around the room, conversations restarted in fragments. Sentences half-formed. Voices testing volume like people learning a new language. Someone tried to laugh it off. Someone else shook their head, replaying angles, numbers, outcomes that no longer made sense. A man at the next table whispered, "He didn't even look angry." That detail bothered them most. They had expected rage, expected chaos, expected blood or shouting or a chase. What they saw instead was control without cruelty. Outside, a couple of the men who had fled peered back from the corner. They didn't return. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. The street had already taught them what they needed to learn, and lessons learned the hard way tend to be final. Bruce finished his meal. He stood, placed money on the table, more than necessary, and straightened his jacket. As he moved toward the door, the room parted without anyone asking it to. Not respect, not fear, awareness. Bruce stepped outside once more. The street was quieter now, reset. A breeze carried the smell of rain and metal. He looked down the alley where the last of them had disappeared. He didn't chase. He never had. Because the point wasn't to win the night. It was to end it.by the next morning. The details were already wrong. 20 became 30. Minutes became seconds. Elbows became kicks. Kicks became legends. That's how stories move when people need them to be bigger than themselves. But among those who were actually there, the waitress, the cook, the men who watched from windows and doorways, the story stayed strangely quiet. They didn't talk about how many fell. They talked about how little noise it made. "No shouting," someone said. "No chasing," another added. He just stopped it. That detail didn't fit the usual shape of violence, so it unsettled people. Bruce didn't hear most of it. He walked through the city the next day like the night had never happened. Same posture, same pace, same economy. A man who didn't carry yesterday into today unless it had something useful to teach. But the men who ran carried it everywhere. One avoided narrow streets. Another flinched at sudden movement. A third stopped trusting numbers. They didn't become better people overnight. Fear rarely does that. But they learned boundaries where chaos ends and consequence begins. And somewhere in that understanding, something changed. Bruce passed the restaurant again a week later. The owner bowed slightly, deeper than before. Bruce nodded back, equal and brief. Nothing was said. It didn't need to be. The city would forget the details soon enough. Cities always do. But it wouldn't forget the feeling that sometimes strength doesn't announce itself, doesn't escalate, doesn't chase. Sometimes it simply stands up, steps outside, and finishes the conversation. And there was still one last thing the night had left behind. Years later, when people asked Bruce Lee about fights like that night, he never told the story. Not because it wasn't true, because it wasn't important. What mattered wasn't the number of men or the speed of his hands. What mattered was the decision made while still sitting at the table, the choice to control the situation before it became chaos. Bruce believed violence was a language with a limited vocabulary. Say only what you must. End the sentence cleanly. Leave no room for echoes. That night, 20 men thought they were surrounding a meal. They were actually surrounding a lesson about space, about timing, about what happens when confidence meets clarity. Bruce finished his dinner. He paid his bill. He walked away. The street returned to itself. The restaurant filled again. Life continued. But for those who witnessed it, and for those who felt the pavement beneath them, the night stayed sharp. Not as a story about domination, as a reminder. Numbers don't decide outcomes. Noise doesn't equal power. And real strength doesn't stay to be admired. It steps outside, ends the moment, and disappears into the crowd. And by the time anyone thinks to look back, everything is already over.